It is said that the cold palace is considered the most unlucky place and the grave of disgraced concubines. So does it exist in real life? Let's find out about it. Is the cold palace real or not? Before we talk about the cold palace, let's take a moment to talk about the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City is located in the center of Beijing. It was the palace of 24 dynasties from the middle of the Ming Dynasty to the end of the Yin Dynasty. This is the place where power is concentrated, convince courtiers, conduct grave ceremonies, and it's also the place where the emperor and his concubines lived. The world surrounding the Forbidden City is more than 3,000 meters long, nearly 10 meters high. There is also a river full of crocodiles surrounding the wall, which is said to protect the security of people inside. Among the more than 8,000 rooms in the Forbidden City, many visitors are especially curious about the harem area. More specifically, there's a mysterious area that makes those who love Chinese historical films have to think of. That is the Cold Palace. It's only in movies or in real life. In fact, the Cold Palace does exist in real life, but in the Forbidden City, there is no place to hang a sign of the Cold Palace. The Cold Palace is just a concept, it's not a specific location. It's simply a cell for concubines who are no longer in grace and are located in different places during each king's life. For example, during the Ming Dynasty, the Cold Palace was located in the west, but in the Wangsu Dynasty, the Cold Palace was located in the north. The earthly hell of the concubines. The Cold Palace is called the earthly hell because the concubines are put here to live a life no more than prisoners. Because they had no one to talk to, no servants, no luxurious food. Everyday food was just the simplest dishes for servants. The Cold Palace is normally located in the remote area, with few people and little repair. There were many concubines because they can't stand living there, so they just went crazy. They screamed and sketched on the wall, leaving blood stains on the door. In history, there have been many events directly related to the Cold Palace. For example, during the Yin Dynasty, Consort Zhang was imprisoned by Empress Dowager Cixi in the Cold Palace in the north, and was forced to commit suicide by jumping into a well after that. During the Ming Dynasty, the Wangsu Palace in the west were later used as a Cold Palace. At that time, Emperor Tianqi's mother colluded with a eunuch and held a lot of power in the palace. The concubines who were not pleasing to her eyes were all thought to be feared and imprisoned in the Cold Palace. Just as Zhang Yufei, the mother harbored hatred in her heart and said bad things in front of the Emperor Haizong, saying that the child that Zhang Yufei was being carried in was not the emperor's child. After listening to this, the emperor sent the concubine to the Cold Palace in a position that was later to be the royal garden of the Yin Dynasty. Zhang Yufei was also not allowed to eat, forces her to die because of too starving. By the time of Emperor Hongzhi, Ji Zhufei was also imprisoned here. However, she was much luckier than other concubines, becoming the first person to give birth to an emperor in the Cold Palace. The child was none other than Hongzhi. With the help of eunuchs and court ladies, Hongzhi lived in the old palace. At the age of 6, he entered the palace to receive his father and later become emperor. Xiao Palace, the palace for men. In feudal history, the Cold Palace was also used to imprison men, and their rent was just the same as that of concubines. The Cold Palace for men was named Xiaoyao. It was associated with the founding emperor of the Ming Dynasty, Zhao Yongzhang. Because of his difficult childhood, Zhao Yongzhang hates lazy people. He stipulated that the officials and the people have only 3 days off a year. All people who were addicted to gambling or had nothing to do would be locked up in the Cao Yao Palace. Then they could be tortured and starved to death. Later, Cao Yao Palace became a place to keep prisoners and criminal eunuchs. The Yin dynasty also inherited this tradition. Reveal the secret of the palace. The knowledge of the ancient people about the palace was very little because there was little chance for them to enter. Therefore, information about the cold palace was even rarer. Later, the Forbidden City was open to the public. However, some locations including the cold palace have still remained sealed. A very long time ago, people have spared many thrilling and horrifying accounts about the cold palace. Is it because of these reasons that the palace is still not open to visitors? It isn't true. When the last emperor of the Yin dynasty, Pui, published the book My First Half-Life, everyone had the correct answer to that question. Accordingly, the cold palace inside the Forbidden City is a very dilapidated place because of not being cared for and repaired. Besides, the cold palace also does not have much value to visit in. Moreover, it is an unsafe place which can threaten visitors' lives. That's all about today. See you in the next video.